1 to 2 hours. The delusional productivity. If you're sleeping 1 to 2 hours a night, you're probably either a self-proclaimed productivity guru who thinks sleep cycles are optional, or a chaotic night owl who accidentally stayed up until 4:37 a.m., but you have a meeting at 8. I need you to know something. You're not built different. You are chemically hijacked. Let me explain. From the moment you wake up, your brain runs on ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is basically your body's microscopic fuel source. Every thought, decision, and overreaction costs ATP. When your cells use it, it breaks down. One of the leftovers? Adenosine. Adenosine builds up in your brain the longer you stay awake. As it accumulates, it attaches to receptors and creates what scientists call sleep pressure, the biological urge to shut down and recover. That heavy, I can't think feeling? That's not laziness, that's your brain's chemistry demanding maintenance. Now, if you only sleep 1 or 2 hours, you barely reduce that buildup. You don't complete a full 90-minute sleep cycle. You skip deep sleep, the phase where real restoration happens. So, why do you sometimes feel weirdly powerful? Cortisol. When your body detects extreme sleep loss, it assumes danger, so it floods you with stress hormones. Adrenaline rises, cortisol spikes. You enter a tired but wired state. You feel sharp, intense, slightly unstable. For a short burst, it feels like a superpower. It's not. It's survival mode. Studies show chronic restriction at this level rapidly impairs cognitive function, emotional regulation, immune health, and metabolic stability. And here's the dangerous part. Your perception of impairment drops. You think you're functioning better than you are. Now, psychologically, this sleep pattern often reveals one of 3 things. Control obsession. Sleep feels like wasted time to you. Avoidance. Night feels safer than day, so you stay up. Or dopamine chasing. Scrolling, gaming, binge-watching. Stimulation feels better than stillness. In all cases, it's not endurance. It's dysregulation. Sleep is usually the first sacrifice when someone is trying to outrun discomfort, and chronically living here increases amygdala reactivity, meaning you become more impulsive, more emotionally reactive, more dramatic, while believing you're being efficient. 2 to 4 hours. The borrowed energy lifestyle. 2 to 4 hours of sleep is where people start saying things like, I don't need that much sleep, which is adorable, because biologically, you are one missed call away from cognitive collapse. In this range, you might squeeze in 1 incomplete sleep cycle if the timing is generous. Maybe a little light sleep, maybe a blink of REM, but deep slow-wave sleep, the heavy-duty repair phase, is barely happening. Growth hormone release? Minimal. Neural cleanup? Half-hearted. And yet, you wake up feeling strangely locked in. That's, again, the cortisol illusion. When sleep is restricted, your body compensates by flooding you with stress hormones. Noradrenaline spikes, cortisol rises. You get this razor focus effect for the first few hours of the day. It feels sharp, tactical, like you're operating in grayscale but at high resolution. But here's the catch. Research from the University of Pennsylvania shows that after just a couple nights of 4-hour sleep, cognitive performance drops to levels comparable to legal intoxication. And here's the truly sinister part. Your perception of impairment flattens. You feel adapted. You're not. Now psychologically, this sleep bracket reveals something different than the 1 to 2 hour chaos crowd. This is the hustle delusion zone. It often signals achievement-based self-worth. If you're resting, you're falling behind. Or stimulation dependency. Your brain prefers intensity over equilibrium. This range is common among founders, students, new parents, and anyone who believes exhaustion equals importance. And here's the weird twist. Short-term sleep restriction can increase divergent thinking. When your frontal lobe gets slightly impaired, your brain filters less. It connects unusual ideas. You might have a random creative spike. But that's not genius. That's your executive function briefly off duty. Long-term emotional regulation tanks. The amygdala becomes hyperreactive. Neutral texts feel aggressive. Minor setbacks feel catastrophic. You're basically walking around with your threat detection system set to paranoid. 4 to 6 hours. The respectable sleep deprivation. Ah yes, 4 to 6 hours. The most socially accepted form of self-sabotage. This is the sleep schedule of new parents, med students, startup founders, and that one friend who says, I've always been a short sleeper, while visibly buffering mid-conversation. Biologically, this range is where things get sneaky. You're probably completing 3 core sleep cycles, enough to prevent total system failure. You get some slow-wave sleep, a little REM, your brain isn't on fire, but it's also not clean. Deep sleep is when the glymphatic system kicks in, your brain's nighttime janitor. During slow-wave sleep, brain cells shrink slightly, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flush out metabolic waste, including beta-amyloid proteins linked to Alzheimer's disease. When you cut sleep at 5 hours, you're basically doing a quick rinse instead of a deep wash. The trash is still there, just rearranged. Now psychologically, this range reveals something fascinating. 4 to 6 hour sleepers often operate from high-functioning denial. You can work, you can socialize, you can answer emails, so your brain logs it as proof that you don't need more. But studies from Harvard Medical School show chronic restriction in this range impairs attention, reaction time, glucose metabolism, and emotional regulation, even when people believe they're functioning normally. This schedule often reflects chronic stress normalization. You're used to tension. Calm feels unfamiliar. Or identity fused with busyness. Rest feels indulgent. Over time, your subjective sense of tiredness plateaus. You don't feel worse, even though your cognitive performance keeps declining. You think you've adapted. But in reality, you are living in a house where the trash gets taken out only when guests are coming over. 6 to 7 hours. The memory, save point. Now we enter the interesting territory. 6 to 7 hours is where your brain almost does everything it's supposed to, but not quite enough to feel smug about it. Biologically, this is when memory consolidation really kicks in. During the day, new information is stored in the hippocampus, which is basically your brain's RAM. Fast, temporary, fragile. If you don't offload it, it gets overwritten by tomorrow's chaos. During stage 2 sleep, especially prominent in this 6 to 7 hour window, your brain produces something called sleep spindles. These are bursts of synchronized neural firing that act like data couriers, transferring memories from the hippocampus to the neocortex, your long-term storage. This is where skills stick. Practice piano, code, study for an exam. The learning doesn't solidify while you're practicing. It locks in while you're unconscious. Studies show that after practicing a motor task, people who sleep at least 6 to 7 hours perform faster and more accurately the next day without additional practice. Your brain literally rewires itself overnight. But here's the psychological reveal. 6 to 7 hour sleepers often value performance, but not restoration. You care about improvement. You want to get better. You just don't want to slow down long enough to maximize it. This schedule is common among competence-driven personalities. Growth matters. Rest is negotiable. Or mild optimization addicts. You track habits, stack routines, and shave hours when things get busy. 6 to 7 hours is efficient. You'll remember the information. You just might not fully stabilize the emotional context around it. 7 hours. The emotional thermostat. 7 hours is where things start to balance out. Because now we're not just talking about productivity. We're talking about emotional stability. Here's what most people don't realize. Sleep isn't one long, flat state. It moves in cycles, roughly 90 minutes each, shifting between light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. In REM, most dreaming happens. But more importantly, it's when your brain processes emotions. And the longest REM cycles happen in the second half of the night. So if you're waking up at 6.5 hours to an alarm that sounds like a smoke detector having a panic attack, you're often cutting off the most emotionally important part of sleep. During REM sleep, levels of noradrenaline, one of your brain's main stress chemicals, drop to almost zero. That's rare. During the rest of the day, noradrenaline is always circulating in some amount, keeping you alert and reactive. But in REM, your brain is chemically safe. In that stress-free environment, your brain replays emotional experiences from the day. It revisits conversations, conflicts, awkward moments, but without the full chemical intensity attached. It separates the emotion from the event. It's basically overnight emotional processing. When you don't get enough REM sleep, that reset doesn't fully happen. Research shows the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, becomes up to 60% more reactive when you're sleep-deprived, which means neutral faces look hostile, emails feel passive-aggressive, minor inconveniences feel personal. Now, psychologically, consistent 7-hour sleepers tend to show higher emotional regulation, better impulse control, lower baseline anxiety. This is where emotional intelligence starts stabilizing biologically. You're not just remembering what happened yesterday, you're digesting it. You're less defensive, less reactive. 8 hours, the hormonal upgrade window. Now we're in athlete territory. 8 hours isn't laziness. It's biological leverage. This is where the endocrine system finally gets to do its job without being rushed off stage. During the first half of the night, slow-wave sleep triggers the largest pulse of human growth hormone you'll release, all day. That's your repair signal. Muscle tissue rebuilding, collagen production, cellular regeneration, immune recalibration. But here's the nuance most people miss. It's not just about releasing the hormone, it's about giving your body enough total sleep time for receptors to respond properly. Cut the night short, and you blunt the full uptake. A University of Chicago study found that men sleeping 5 hours a night for just 1 week showed testosterone levels comparable to someone 10 to 15 years older. Sleep less, age faster. Sleep more, rebuild better. This is why elite athletes, LeBron-level humans, often sleep 9+ hours. Not because they're bored, because recovery is performance. Now psychologically, 8-hour sleepers tend to show something different than the efficient 6 to 7 hour crowd. This range often reveals long-term orientation. You think in decades, not deadlines. Delayed gratification tolerance? You're okay sacrificing late-night stimulation for next-day performance. Lower impulsivity. Hormonal balance stabilizes mood, libido, aggression, and motivation. So, if you consistently hit this window, you're not just physically recovering. You're psychologically stabilizing your baseline. You're less reactive, less volatile, less likely to make decisions at 11:47 p.m. that ruin your 11:47 a.m. 8 hours of sleep switches from damage control to upgrading hardware. 9 hours, the eureka drift. 9 hours is where sleep stops being maintenance and starts becoming creative mischief. This is the range where you wake up with solutions you didn't consciously solve. Ever notice how your best ideas show up in the shower, on a walk, or right after waking up? That's not random. That's hypnopompic spillover. The lingering cognitive looseness from REM sleep bleeding into waking life. When you're fully rested and allowed to wake naturally around the 9-hour mark, your brain exits REM gradually. And REM is wild. During this stage, the prefrontal cortex, your logical gatekeeper, goes slightly offline. Meanwhile, associative networks light up. The brain starts connecting distant concepts that would normally never shake hands. It links A to Z. That's called associative looseness, and it's the biological foundation of creativity. Historically, artists and scientists have exploited this state. Salvador Dalí famously used micronaps to dip into dream imagery. Paul McCartney woke up with the melody for Yesterday fully formed in his head. It wasn't magic. It was REM doing its thing. Now psychologically, 9-hour sleepers often reveal cognitive flexibility, tolerance for mental wandering, higher openness to experience. You're less rigid, less locked into binary logic, more likely to generate novel connections. But here's the key. This only works if you wake naturally. If you're ripped out of REM by an alarm at hour 7, you snap back into linear processing instantly. The fragile insight dissolves. 9 hours gives your brain time to explore mental side quests and return with treasure. 10 to 12 hours. The oversleep loop. Now we enter dangerous territory. 10 to 12 hours of sleep sounds luxurious. Romantic, even. You wake up at noon. The world has already had coffee. You are horizontal, processing dreams that felt like a Steven Spielberg director's cut. Occasionally, beautiful. Chronically, concerning. Here's the biology first. Sleep follows what researchers call a U-shaped curve. Too little sleep increases risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cognitive decline, and mortality. But so does too much. Chronic oversleeping is associated with elevated inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein. It's correlated with metabolic dysregulation and higher rates of depression. Now, and this is critical, oversleeping is often a symptom, not a cause. It can signal depression, sleep apnea, chronic illness, or burnout recovery. But when it becomes habitual without medical need, something psychological is usually happening. Because past 9 hours, restoration shifts into rumination territory. You spend more time in REM, and REM is emotionally intense. For some individuals prone to depression, extended REM cycles can amplify negative emotional processing, looping narratives instead of resolving them. Sleep becomes avoidance, not recovery. Psychologically, this range can reveal withdrawal coping. The bed becomes a refuge from unsolved stressors. low behavioral activation. It feels easier to stay unconscious than engage. Or emotional exhaustion. You're not lazy, you're depleted. There's also something called sleep inertia. That heavy, disoriented, what year is it? Feeling after long sleep durations. The longer you sleep past your natural rhythm, the more groggy you can feel upon waking, which creates the illusion that you need even more sleep. It becomes a loop. Your sleep schedule, more than almost any other habit, quietly reveals whether you're regulating your life or escaping it. And if this made you question your entire nighttime identity, good, because the next video is going even deeper into how your brain quietly shapes your behavior.